Hello everybody, welcome back. I am KRX. We're going to be doing a tutorial series for Europa Universalis 4 for complete beginners. What's going to make this a little bit different than the other tutorials that we've done on the channel is this is going to be with only a handful of DLCs based on the Empire Founders Pack on Steam. So a lot of people end up getting this one when they pick up the game. It comes with Art of War, Rights of Man, and Common Sense. So this is, instead of doing a DLC playthrough with, tutorial series with all of the DLCs, or with none of the DLCs, we're going to do a little bit of an in-between here based on some of the highly recommended ones that come in that convenient bundle that you can get on Steam. Let's go to single player here, and let's look at the world. So this is the entire world of Europa Universalis 4. This is, again, a tutorial for complete beginners, people that don't maybe even fully understand what the game's all about or how it works, things like that. The entire world is simulated, and you can pick any of these nations in the world to play. I think for this tutorial, we're going to be doing England. We've done a couple tutorials without any DLCs, Portugal and Muscovy. We've done a couple tutorials with all of the DLCs, Ottomans and Castile. So there's 4 different tutorials that people can sort of watch in the same spirit, in the same flow, in the same rhythm, based on the sort of the combination of DLCs or no DLCs that you might have. This is going to be a sort of an in-between, I guess, on that. The other thing I want to do with this one, it's going to be a little bit goofy, I admit, is I'm thinking that we might make these episodes much longer, and therefore the tutorial series will be much shorter. So maybe it will be 3 to 4 episodes, but each of the tutorials will be significantly longer. And I'm hoping what we can cover in this one is all of the getting started stuff. The thing is, this game is very complicated and very intertwined. So there's no real fast way to learn this game. Even the tutorial series that we have that are maybe 10 to 15 episodes, and maybe they're 5 to 7 hours of content, those don't even cover a small fraction of all the game systems and answer all the questions, guys. This is my best attempt to compress as much of the core information to allow people to play the game and make their own decisions. Okay, this is the big difference between, I think, what we're trying to do and what other tutorials are trying to do. Other tutorials are just telling you, click all these buttons with this nation, you'll do okay. I'm going to try to develop a strategy on the fly and explain that thought process so that you guys can apply what we learn playing England in this tutorial series. You can apply that to France. You can apply that to Poland. You can apply that to Muscovy or the Ottomans or Castile. But we are going to be looking through England's perspective. This is not a tutorial for England. Guys, I've never played England before. Believe it or not, I'm actually not I like France more. I've played France a bunch of times. I haven't played England. I'm familiar with England just because I've played the game a bunch of times, so I understand kind of like the time period and some of the events that happen for England, some of the issues. In fact, England's actually really not very much of a beginner nation for a number of reasons that we're going to figure out. This is actually kind of a tough start. For one of the more powerful countries in the game, I'll just say right up ahead, this is a tougher one. France is easier than England. Castile is easier than England. Ottomans are easier than England. All the tutorials we've done so far are easier than England. Ottomans, Muscovy, Portugal, so on and so forth. England has some challenges to overcome, including the fact that, boom, we got a looming disaster right off the bat. This red banner is flashing on us over here telling us that. But without getting too ahead of ourselves, my point of the story is I'm not an expert on England. This isn't how to play England. This is how to play Europa Universalis 4. So we're going to go through the system. We're going to navigate the ecosystem and figure out what's going on and make some decisions and try to create a strategy, a tactical, or at least a plan of attack. You know, figure out the tactics that we're going to employ here on this run as England. And fundamentally, every time you load the game, you're going to get a very different ecosystem. The way that these other nations, again, we talked about how you could play any of these nations, right? These are hundreds of different nations. And we can see the known world right now for England. A lot of it that was available, like Africa and Asia and stuff that was available in the nation select screen, is now being sort of blocked out by Terra Incognita, sort of a fog of war. There's kind of 2 different layers of fog of war. If we zoom in here, we'll see that there's a fog of war that applies to areas that we can't see, and then areas that we just clearly don't even know about at all, right? We don't even know what's beyond this. So we can still interact with Hungary. We can click on them and we can see information about them, and we can maybe even go into their diplomacy tab and stuff like that. But we don't fundamentally... we can't see where their troops are or anything like that. There's still a fog of war sort of over their lands, but we can interact with any of these countries. So what's important to note is we picked England. We are England. We will always be England. Unless we become Great Britain or something like that. We could form a sort of a higher level of nation. A new tag, basically. We can sort of evolve our country. But all the other nations here are being played by the computer. So they're still being played to the best of the computer's ability, individually. It's not that they're all playing against us. They're not teaming up against us, but France is doing what's best for France. Castile's doing what's best for Castile. Ottomans are doing what's best for the Ottomans. Austria's doing what's best for Austria, as best as they can, right? It is still a computer. They don't make perfect decisions, but they have a way of thinking through the game. And they're going to be applying that individually based on their ecosystem, trying to go to war with weaker nations and get stronger and find alliances with common friends and so on and so forth, right? So one of the big aspects of this game is really just figuring out who do we want to attack? Who's our enemy? Who's our ally, right? What's the situation there? Who likes us? Who doesn't like us? Well, if you know anything about this time period, we're starting the game in 1444. And the game plays until 1821, and it is a real-time strategy game. So when we unpause, if I hit the spacebar, and I can pause or unpause anytime I want, time will continue to flow. Just very slowly on speed 1, we can go between speed 1 and speed 5. I think we'll keep it on about speed 3. Speed 3 is a good middle of the line. Maybe we want to go down to speed 2 when we get into war, kind of slow it down a little bit. Maybe we want to go up. It just kind of depends. If you're waiting around for something to happen, you can go up to speed 4, speed 5. 5 is very fast, 1 is very slow, so we probably don't want to play on speed 1 very often. But you can just adjust that based on how you like. You can play at a slower speed, but pause left often. You can play at a higher speed, but pause more often. It just depends on how you want to do. But we can fundamentally do everything we want in the game while paused. The only thing that won't happen is time won't progress. Therefore, sort of the dynamics of the ecosystems won't change while the game is paused. So we can make decisions. But we can still move troops around, and we can collect or sort of queue up movement of troops, I guess, and click on buttons and make sort of diplomatic actions and stuff like that while the game is paused. So we're going to be doing a lot of assessment while the game is paused. So we are England. We could just click on England. We could just click on our land here, and it brings up sort of a province tab. It's not too important for us right now. Lots of information there, but we can click on other countries too, and it brings up their province tab, which is slightly different. But more importantly, one of the things I'm going to look at right here is this value here, which is in this case -100. So Scotland is declared as a rival. It says right here that there's a rivalry. Scotland's attitude towards us is a rivalry. Scotland doesn't like us. In fact, they're basically saying that they are a mortal enemy of us. They will undermine us. They will work against us. Okay, so Scotland doesn't like us. That kind of makes sense. I mean, historically, we can kind of understand this. England doesn't like France at this time period, right? And Scotland is sort of being protected by France in a way diplomatically, and we can look and see why that is or how that is and stuff like that. But Scotland and England are at odds as well with each other, and this is representing here by Scotland actually rivaling us. If we click on France, I suspect they might be rivaling us too. They have not rivaled us, but they are very hostile towards us. Like they're at -200. They like desperately demand. They desire some of our provinces. In fact, actually, wait a second. It's saying that some of these are our provinces. If we click on our own country here and we go into what's called the diplomatic map mode, okay, we can see the world will start to highlight in different colors here. Most of it is going to gray out because it's not relevant to our country, but all of this green, everything that's in green is our country. So we actually have land down here in sort of mainland France. We have Calais, we have Normandy up here, we have Maine, we have some of Bordeaux. Interesting. We have a little bit on Ireland. We have the Isle of Man and Portugal. Oh, Portugal's in blue. We are allied with them. We are allied with Portugal. Interesting. Interesting. We can click on Scotland, and it looks like, oh, France is highlighting in purple. Okay, what's going on there? Guaranteeing the independence of Scotland. Okay, so France is guaranteeing the independence of Scotland. If we attack Scotland, then France is going to be called in to defend them. Oh, these guys are kind of in a teal, like a weird stripy bit teal. So it's saying the Isles. Okay, so this is actually a different little nation right here. The Isles. And they actually like us for whatever reason. So the Isles, though, if we go back to that mode there, is it's saying the Isles is our vassal, but this is from Scotland's perspective. So this is the Isles are a Scottish vassal, okay? And we can actually see that if we hovered below their opinion on Scotland, just by clicking on any other provinces, doesn't matter which one. And it says, has the following vassals, the Isles. Okay, so the Isles are a vassal of Scotland, and they're a puppet nation. They have to support Scotland in war and support them during peacetime and economically and so on and so forth. And their independence is guaranteed by France. This is a nice little summary down here of this map mode, right? But the map modes are a way that we can see the world at a glance. If we ever need to go back to the normal map mode, it's called the political map mode. And I have these set up in a different way. You might need to customize these a little bit. But for the most part, you should be able to see the dove, and you should be able to see the political flag here. And if you don't, just right-click on these, and you can add map modes. And there are tons of different map modes that you can do. You can customize these any way you like. If you don't like it there, you can move it down here, move it over here, so on and so forth. So the political map mode is how we see the world broken up by the different countries. It's probably the most useful. It's the way that we're going to be playing the game most of the time. And then the other map modes, we can just sort of get a glimpse of kind of the certain specific situations of how, in this case, the diplomatic map mode, which is pretty useful. If we click on France, they actually have a number of interesting things going on. They have blue down here, so that means they're allied to Provence. Provence is a weird country because they're sort of broken up into all these different little bits. In fact, France is kind of this weird swiggly bit too. They're not even connected. They're not even contiguous. But they do have all these little teal bits, which we learn that teal is vassal subject. So France is actually a combination. We can hover over this. Armagnac, Armagnan, Foix, Orleans, so on and so forth, right? They have all these little guys in here are actually French subjects. So France is actually more, they're not like completely, France is decentralized, right? France is decentralized, but the idea of France as a big blob of a nation is still kind of somewhat intact, right? I guess I don't know if these guys would be under the Kingdom of France in some way or whatever. These are like little duchies of France, right? But these little guys will help out France. So when we consider France's power and their significance and their influence, we kind of have to consider their entire sort of empire, right? Which includes all these little nations and stuff like that too. They have these squiggly lines here over this land, which we learned was ours, right? This is our land. So these little squiggly lines, though, basically say that France considers this to be of her core provinces. France considers this to be her land. In fact, not only this is a core province of France. This is part of the France like core homeland. Like what this kind of means is that once upon a time the French ruled this land and we took it from them. And people still remember that, hey, this is French people living in French land and it's being ruled by England now. That's not right. So people rightfully know that this does indeed belong to France. And France will be able to have a justified reason for going to war over this land in the future. So France has a reason to attack us, specifically to take back land that even the rest of the world recognizes as rightfully theirs. Of course, we have no obligation to give it over to them. They have to come and take it. We could give it to them if we wanted to, but there's no reason to sort of lower ourselves down in that sense. France doesn't like us. We don't like France. We're probably going to rival France. We don't want to help France out if we don't have to. But France is going to come and try to get those. So that is something to consider. There's going to be tension between our two countries for the foreseeable future, right? For the foreseeable future. We're actually at the end of, historically, like the 100 Years' War. We're only a few years away from sort of the end of that. There's going to be another big war between England and France. And then eventually as the game plays, one of the things is this game starts off in a historical template, right? But as the game evolves, as you make decisions as a player, as all the individual AI start playing the game themselves, things become very ahistorical. This is about leading a country through 400 years of an ahistorical situation, 400 years of a non-historical situation, basically, right? The story that we're gonna tell, an ahistorical story, right? We're gonna tell a unique story for England. It's not necessary. We could end up conquering all of France. That's not historical. We could conquer all of France. Actually, is it at one point or another? Maybe they might have had. I think there was a PU over France a personal union over France at one point for England. I don't know. There was so many wars between these two countries. It's just crazy. It's just crazy. I think there was like 4 or 5 wars within this 100-year war period. But right now we're at peace. It's good. It's good to know that right now the world is at peace. And when we unpause, people will start to move and groove, get alliances, get treaties going, start wars, and that's when things are going to start moving and shuffling and stuff. And the way that world evolves is going to be different every single time. Every time you load the game, it's going to be different every single time. So we know that we have England over here. If we're just going to continue to assess the situation, who else is around us? Well, we have this land down here, so that actually kind of makes us concerned with Castile. Like Castile likes us. That's interesting. We could ally Castile. We're allied to Portugal. And we know that Portugal and Castile tend to be historically pretty good friends. And there's actually sort of, if we go to the diplomatic and then we click it one more time, I have it set up to go to the opinion map mode. So this is the opinion map mode. If we look at sort of Castile and Portugal, they actually really like each other because there's something called the historical friend. So these two nations really like each other by default because they have a historical friend modifier. So we could actually ally Castile to round out our alliance with Portugal, and then this will be a good block of Iberia here to support us against France. So this would be a really good amount of power base that we could use to actually help us against France in the future. Aragon actually likes us as well. That's an option. We can click on some of the other big dogs like Austria. Austria likes us. That's an interesting choice. If we click on Burgundy here, Burgundy likes us. Everybody likes us. I bet you Denmark doesn't like us. No, Denmark has rivaled us. Okay, so Denmark is another one that has rivaled us. They do not like us. We have Ireland over here. We have a little bit of land that belongs to us on Ireland, but we can click and we can see, oh, wait a second. Leinster here, Ormond, Desmond, Munster, so on and so forth. All these little guys. And for the most part, it looks like they all like us or at least like us. There's a little heart right here. They have a friendly attitude and they have a positive opinion. Or they're threatened by us, right? Or they're sort of willing to submit to us because they are threatened by us. They think we're coming for them. And maybe we are. I mean, these are a bunch of little, tiny little nations. We're a big, giant nation. It could be, in our quest to form a unified Great Britain, it could be that we actually want to conquer Ireland. That could be one of the things that we want to do. And it looks like the land is ripe for the taking. So that could be something we could look into. In fact, we could maybe even diplomatically annex some of these guys or bring them into our sort of kingdom a little bit diplomatically, which could be kind of interesting. We have Brittany down here. Brittany is threatened by us as well. So threatened nations will be more likely to join alliances and stuff like that because they're kind of worried about you. So like if you're willing to reach out positively to them, they'll be like, okay, cool. That's cool. Let's make an alliance. So because I'm worried you're going to attack. You know what I mean? Some countries are hostile because they want our land. Some countries have rivaled us for other who knows why, so on and so forth. But England is a pretty powerful country, so it makes sense that there's a lot of little countries that are threatened by us. It makes sense that there's some countries that have rivaled us, some countries that just don't like us, like France and so on and so forth. But for the most part, it seems like we don't have that many enemies. If you load the game up at a different time, you might have Burgundy might hate you, Castile might hate you, France might rival you. There's a number of different ways that this can shake out. But typically your rivals, right? We've noticed Scotland and Denmark. Typically your rivals are nations fundamentally are nations that are about your equivalent power within a certain range. I mean, Scotland is not quite exactly like on the same level as England, but there you go. It's supposed to be similar, right? We're not going to be able to rival Brittany probably. They're too small and weak, or Flanders or something like that. But Scotland's maybe just barely big enough. Denmark's definitely big enough because here's the interesting thing. Denmark is not this tiny little country right here, and this is very rich and developed, high trade value land. Denmark's actually a pretty wealthy country. But if we go back to the diplomatic map mode, we can see, teal, more teal. Denmark actually controls Sweden and Norway in personal unions. So into all of Scandinavia is sort of again, decentralized, but relatively united here. Holstein down here, Sweden, Norway, Denmark. So this is a pretty powerful blob, a conglomerate that would be, against us if we were to go to war against Denmark. Okay. So we've kind of looked at our situation a little bit. We have a bunch of little Irish miners that all love us. Scotland doesn't like us. France doesn't like us. Denmark doesn't like us. Most of the other big players in the world seem to like us, like Austria, Burgundy, Castile. We're already allied to Portugal. Aragon likes us. So we have options, right? So we have options, and we're going to want to ally some of these countries most likely. And the way we do that is we send our diplomats. We have 3 free diplomats right now. So if we click on Castile, I'm just going to click on any of their provinces. We can go to the diplomacy. We can go to alliance actions, and we can ally them. Kapow. I'm almost tempted just to do that. I'm almost tempted just to straight up do that. What the heck? Let's send Castile an alliance. Maybe Austria. Here's the interesting thing about Austria is Austria is actually in charge of the Holy Roman Empire. This is a different map mode. It's called the Imperial Map Mode. And I have it down here, but you guys might have it somewhere else. And this shows the entire HRE. And this is one big giant sort of like blob together. And what Austria does is Austria protects this. It's basically Papa Austria here. Protects this giant blob from people like Poland, from people like Denmark, from people like France. And essentially, it's not that this entire unit works together. It's that Austria will specifically join on behalf of any of these nations being attacked from the outside. So Burgundy is also a nation that is going to be threatening the sanctity of the Holy Roman Empire, and Austria will challenge Burgundy. We can actually look, if we go to their diplomacy tab, see, so one of the things is I went to the alliance actions, right, and I sent alliance, and you can see Austria will accept. This big green check mark means they'll accept. I'm sorry, went a little fast on that with I'm going to just open all these tabs because you see there's so many different diplomatic actions. And I can't send another alliance because I just sent one to Castile. So I have to wait 1 day. But I have 2 more free diplomats. We can see that diplomat's going to take 12 days to get back from Toledo, capital of Castile. It's going to take 12 days to get back. So we have to wait 12 days to send that diplomat out again. We can just improve relations. Let's say someone didn't want to ally us, maybe off the bat. Who doesn't want to ally us? The Ottomans probably don't want to ally. No, they've actually rivaled us. Okay, Hungary doesn't want to ally us, right? That's a big red X. No, they do not want us to ally them. We'll still be able to send the offer, but they will say no. This tells us ahead of time it's not a guessing game. It's not a chance. It is a no. Because the positive reasons, the reasons they want to ally us, are lower than the reasons they don't want to ally us. And one of the big reasons there is a neutral opinion, neutral attitude, and distance between borders. They don't have a friendly attitude towards us. They just have a neutral. You don't want to build alliances with people you're just neutral ho-hum about. You want to build alliances with people that are really enthusiastic about it, that you're really friendly with. So for the most part, but we can still overcome this because we can improve our opinion, right? This 25 opinion here, which is good because we have the same religion. We can boost that up by plus 100 more by sending a diplomat to butter up Austria to just make them happy and make this number go up to what would ultimately be 100 plus same religion plus 1, so it would be 120. This is a modifier between plus 200 and minus 200. But certain things give certain amounts, like the same religion gives 25. That's all that's ever going to be. That's never going to go up. Improved relations can give up to 100 more, but it takes time. It takes massaging of Austria with our diplomat in order to get them up to the plus 100, and then additionally with the 25 to make them 125. At that point, they would ally us for sure. That would make them happy enough that they'd be willing to ally us despite a neutral attitude. For example, if we go to Austria here, we can see that we can get a royal marriage. We can't send an alliance yet. We have to wait 1 day to get an alliance, but we can send a royal marriage. And a royal marriage will secure the alliance because it'll make them super happy. We'll get a diplomatic relationship with them. A royal marriage sometimes is an avenue to getting an alliance. What we were just saying, though, is that Austria is very powerful. Austria is very powerful, and Austria's going to challenge France. Austria's going to challenge Burgundy. So it might make sense to royal marry Austria and sort of get that going there. Oh, because of that, we actually got a new queen. We got a new queen. Fantastic. A 516. That's good. We don't know what that means exactly, but I'll tell you that's pretty good. So we have 1 more free diplomat. We can use them to butter somebody up and make them happy. But for the most part, we have a lot of people that already like us. The other thing we can do actually is we can use it to create a claim. We can use that diplomat as a spy. So we can go down to Burgundy down here, and we can actually build a spy network on them. And if we send this diplomat to Burgundy as a spy, it doesn't help with our relations, quite the opposite. However, assuming the spy doesn't get detected, we'll be able to actually fabricate a claim. So we build up this spy network, and we can spend that spy network that we build. It's about 1.5 to 2 per month, and we can fabricate a claim on Burgundy's land, and we can get a reason, a justification to attack their land. We can be like, aha, Picardy right here is actually rightfully ours, and we can set the groundwork for war against Burgundy using this last diplomat. I don't know exactly what we're going to want to do with that diplomat. I don't know where we're going to want to go to war exactly. So we might want to actually hold off a second because there's something I think we need to look at. We've looked at our diplomatic ecosystem. We're allied to Portugal. We're picking up the alliance with Castile. They already said yes. We got the royal marriage with Austria. We'll round back around to get the alliance with them. So one thing you might be asking is, why don't we ally everybody? Let's just ally everybody. Well, let's go to our own diplomacy tab. We can hit this big crest over here. It remembers we were just talking to Burgundy. Diplomacy tab, right? Burgundy. Let's go back to, we have to hit this button here to go back to our own personal perspective here. And one thing we can see on this thing, without getting too bogged down in all this information, is over here we got this handshakes, 3 out of 4. 3 out of 4 diplomatic relations. We have a relationship with Portugal, we have a relationship with Castile, we have a relationship with Austria. And these are 4 unique nations that we can have a diplomatic relationship with without going over the limit. We are allowed to go over the limit, that's okay. However, we start to take a diplomatic penalty for that. So there's a cost associated with that, right? There's an opportunity cost for going over this number. We might need to go over this number. Who knows? But for the most part, this is kind of where we want to stay. If we can stay to 4, that's good. So for the most part, there's not really any reason to get more than 4 relationships. If we are already going to get really powerful alliances like Castile, like Austria, like Portugal, maybe maybe Burgundy, maybe not. Maybe someone in Ireland, maybe not. It just kind of depends on what we're trying to do there. So this is our own personal thing. And it says that our rival slots are empty, but it does show here, actually. We already found all of our rivals. We found the Ottomans down here by clicking on them randomly. We found Scotland and Denmark just by looking around and assessing the situation. However, there is this tab here that says these are our enemies. These are the people that rival us. And we can then, we have to rival people ourselves. Too few rivals. Well, okay, let's go. Well, I think we're going to rival France, because that's going to be something that makes sense. The fact France didn't rival us is a little goofy. We definitely want to rival France, I believe. I think we're going to rival Scotland. That makes sense. War against Scotland is kind of an inevitability. Now, the last one, we could rival Burgundy, who likes us right now. Or we could rival Denmark. Ottomans are too far. They've rivaled us, but honestly, we're not that. Like, there is a relative distance in terms of how much we care about what's going on down here. We just don't care about the Ottomans right now. They're too far away to care. We're not going to be going to war with these guys. They're just not proximal enough. Denmark, the interesting thing about Denmark is it looks like they're really far away. However, Norway is controlled by Denmark, and Norway actually owns Iceland and some of these little islands up here, including a little province that's right off of the bit of Scotland here. So Denmark might actually be a future opportunity to attack Denmark in order to sort of get this land here. But this is kind of after we take out Scotland, right? We're still not quite up there yet. Can't get any claims on them or anything like that. So I think Denmark's in the future. For now, see, the interesting thing is what we're doing by creating these rivals is we're creating a diplomatic battle line in many ways. We can actually go to Burgundy and see, okay, Burgundy, who are your rivals? France, Austria, Aragon. Denmark is an enemy, but Austria is not actually rivaled Burgundy. Okay, so Burgundy and Austria don't like each other. That's to be expected. France and Austria probably don't like each other. France, you have not rivaled Castile, however. Castile and France could team up potentially, but the fact that we've rivaled France and we've allied Castile, we're telling France, or we're telling Castile, don't rival France, or sorry, don't ally France. Sorry, we've created a diplomatic battle line, right? We're allied to Castile, we're rivaled to France. That tells France and Castile that they shouldn't be friends, because they know that there could be tension between England and France. Castile doesn't want to be on sort of like in between those two bits. They've aligned themselves to us, so that means they've picked our battle line against France. So it's unlikely that France will be able to ally Castile due to the fact that Castile is allied to France's rival. Except the weird thing is that France technically hasn't actually rivaled us, but well, it is what it is. They could still materialize something there. Who knows? Let's man, what is the situation with Aragon here? Aragon has an enemy in Castile. They've rivaled Burgundy and France. Man, Aragon's going to get beat up. Aragon is going to get beat up, unfortunately. We could rival Aragon. I'm thinking I like the fact that Burgundy likes us. Aragon's kind of like, I think we're going to rival Aragon just because they're kind of far away and everybody seems to hate them, so let's just jump on that train. Let's jump on that train. Okay, so we got one of our red banners out of the way. The other one says War of the Roses, looming disaster going on here. Okay, so these are the little banners of the things we can look at. We've looked at the fact we have diplomats. That's it. We've looked at some of the map modes down here. These are just ways to see the world at a glance. There's a bunch of stuff up here we haven't talked about at all because it's very intertwined with all the systems in the game, and we'll try to discover these things as we move through. We're trying to ask questions and make answers to those questions. But if we're moving through these here, it says a looming disaster. That sounds pretty devastating, to be honest. If we go to, this takes us to our stability and expansion tab, and we can see, guys, that the world, or the game, I should say, sorry, our country is broken into all of these different tabs. We can see the diplomacy tab here, which we've already visited before, but we also have the court, the leadership, we have the government, and this is talking about, cultures and government ranks and things, diplomacy, economy. We haven't gone into any detail. We're not teaching any of this. We're just showing that this is kind of how things are divided up. We have trade, which is part of economy. We have technologies that we're working on. We have different sort of ideas and philosophies that we're building on, and this is part of technology because we can customize and we can go for these different ideologies based on how we want to customize our nation. This is a big way to customize your nation, but it's tied into the technology system. We have missions. Okay, we need to look at these missions and figure out what's going on here. and basically work on some of this stuff here, because this will guide us. This will tell us what we want to do. We have decisions of policies that we can enact, and these will highlight when they become relevant. Right now, none of them are activated. And then now we're looking at our disaster, and we have the War of the Roses. Okay. All of the following must be true. We need an heir, and it needs the heir has a dynasty of York or Lancaster or Plantagenet, whatever. Is the lesser part in a personal union? I don't think we want to do that. Have Regency Council. So one of the following must be true to get rid of this, right? But why is it ticking up? It's ticking up because ruling dynasty is not York. Stability is less than 1, so we could actually raise it. It's telling us that we could potentially raise our stability to help with this. Ruler has low administrative skill. Okay. So if we had a good ruler, and we had an heir, and if we were York, and all these things that we can't really affect right now. Unfortunately, this is coming. Historically, this is coming. I hate to say it, but there will be a disaster. The War of the Roses is coming. This will destabilize your country. This is one of the many reasons, actually, why England is not a great beginner nation, because for the most part, France is poised to beat us up, because France has a very powerful military. They can dominate mainland Europe, completely dominate it. So if they attack us, we're going to lose that war potentially in a big way. And we have disaster at home. So we have we have an exterior threat and we have internal threats. So that's not good. So this disaster, unfortunately, it's looming, but there's nothing we can do about it. It says we have no debate in Parliament, and we have too few seats in the Parliament. And this is unique. So this is because we're playing with the Common Sense DLC, right? We're using the Founders Pack, Common Sense, Art of War, Rights of Man. Okay? And this is giving us the Parliament system, and that applies. And the only country in the world, I believe, that starts off with a Parliament is England in the year 1444, which is pretty cool. Parliament is actually super awesome. So it says that we have too few seats, though. We have too few seats. Your country needs at least 8 seats, and you only have 5. So we just need to go around, and we can see that London is part of the Parliament. London has a seat in Parliament. And that basically just means that's literally just a good thing. It just gives them more local production efficiency, more local tax efficiency, local manpower. It just makes the province like super juiced up. However, the more provinces that you give representation to in Parliament, the harder it is to pass Parliament debates, right? So what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to pass a debate here. However, we're losing, but we're gaining, I think, corruption or something. Some bad things are happening right now because we don't have no debate in Parliament. We're losing a little bit because of that, embezzler, so on and so forth. So we don't have a healthy system because we don't have enough Parliament seats. So we just need to click on some provinces. And the thing is, essentially, you can kind of take as much time as you want with this. But essentially, because this super juices the provinces, it makes sense to give them to provinces that are higher development, that are richer provinces. London, naturally our capital, and sort of a historical trade center and everything like that, is a pretty rich province at 20 development here. That means there's a lot of base tax, there's a lot of production, there's a lot of population that lives here and contributes a lot to the army. 20 development compared to like 9 and less, right? As we go out here, there's quite a bit less, so on and so forth. So we can kind of like click around here and just looking at this number here, how this changes, and just kind of see what the dealio is here. Essex is pretty cool. What we could also do is we could look into the state and 14. I mean, 14 is pretty good. Essex, let's give Essex a seat. That makes sense. So it says we need 8. We had 5. Now we have 6. Kent already has a seat. Sussex needs a seat. Guys, I'm going to pronounce stuff wrong. I apologize. I'm just uneducated American over here. Alrighty. Let's get to Hampshire. There we go. We've now gotten up to 8 seats in Parliament. So that banner went away. It's no longer complaining about that. We can start a debate now. Okay. So starting a debate means that we can get some different things. We can basically sort of enact like a 10-year policy, essentially. Okay, and this is unique to England. This is unique to parliaments. Now, other countries can become parliament over time, can reform their government into a parliament, but England starts with that. It makes them very unique, and this is because we have common sense again. If you don't have common sense, you won't have this, which is okay. So we can reduce land maintenance modifier. So we're presumably paying a land maintenance for See, the thing is, a lot of this, to be honest, we don't have the context to understand what any of this stuff does. Sailor recovery. Okay, we have sailors up here. I'll say for the most part, we have plenty of sailors. I don't think we need more sailors. Advisor costs, we don't have any advisors right now. I don't know if we can afford any advisors. Culture conversion costs, we're not going to be doing any culture conversions. This sounds good. Quartering of the troops. Land maintenance modifier minus 10%. If we go to our economy, we're paying 8 ducats a month for land maintenance. So presumably if we could save 10%, that's going to mean that we're going to have a larger balance. That's good. So without going into the details here, this seems like the only one that's even like slightly reasonable. However, I'm not too worried about this. So what we have to do now is we can basically go through and bribe the seats, right? We have 8 seats. Two of them are already voting for this. But we can go through and we can bribe the seats. This is going to give the clergy influence with the estates. We haven't talked about the estates. So I'm just kind of like clicking some things. Diplomatic power here. These points up here are very, this is, we're going to wait on that. We're going to wait on that. There's so many things that that's actually, the parliament system actually encompasses so many different things we haven't talked about yet. So forget that. We haven't talked about these points up here, which are very, very valuable and very important. So we took care of that banner, though. We have a debate in parliament. It's just we're not winning it yet, right? We're at 56% chance to win. Maybe that's good enough. But we can go through and we can bribe them a little bit more by paying some ducats or giving them some military power or losing some army tradition stuff. We just don't really know whether or not this is worth it to spend any of this stuff yet, is the problem. 20 ducats right now. We only have 73 ducats. I don't know if we want to spend 20 of it on that. Let's go to our missions. We saw that we had some missions. Let's check these out and try to figure things out. And basically what we're doing, guys, I mean, we're now shifting from looking at the diplomatic environment, the diplomatic ecosystem, to looking at our internal situation and trying to make decisions for setting up our country at the beginning of the game, which if you've played any of the Paradox Grand Strategy games before, you know you spend an hour or two paused before unpausing the game, trying to just get everything situated, trying to get your production in line, trying to look at your economy, figure out what your plan is, develop a strategy. That's what we're doing right now, guys. We're looking at our missions. This will help guide us. The problem is all these things are intertwined, right? We can't do the parliament debate until we know how much money we're making, how our economy looks, or what we need to use are these points for. We can't, look at our economy because, well, we could look at our economy. We're going to do that next, but let's look at the missions first. The missions will at least give us an idea of what to look out for, how we can potentially fulfill these. These are things that we can get rewards for doing these things. Manpower at least 60%. Okay, it wants us to get our manpower to 60%. We haven't talked about manpower, but manpower is the reserves that replenish the regiment armies. Okay, these are like the reserves that will replenish the regiments as they take losses to attrition or losses in battle and stuff like that. Right now we have 8,000. It wants to get to 60%. Our maximum is almost 30,000, so 60% would be, since we'll just say 16,000 or 17,000 or so, right? 18,000. So we need about 18,000 manpower. And we also need a force limit of 100%. We haven't talked about force limit. If we go to the production tab, we can quickly see, and we go to the production tab here, the production interface, and here we have land units. We have infantry or cavalry that we can buy, and it says that we want to get up to 100% force limit. We're at 29 out of 37 army force limit, so we can build 8,000 more troops. Just like our diplomatic relationships, we can go over this number, but it costs much more. The maintenance cost for these units goes up significantly if you go beyond the 37. So it becomes a huge economic burden to go way beyond this 37. If we go just a few over, that's fine, if our economy is good. But it does get quite a bit more expensive. This is going to give us free claims on on just everything. It looks like it's going to give us free claims on it's saying Perth and Leinster and Ulster and Scotland and yada, yada, yada. It's just going to give us all kinds of reasons to go to war with all of the British Isles. It's just like, get ready for war and then attack everybody. That's essentially what this is telling us. That's what this is telling us. It's saying conquer Ireland. It's saying conquer Scotland. That's how this is going to segue. Okay. Trustworthy allies. So we get have 2 allies. We're working on that. We have Portugal. We're getting Castile. We're going to get Austria. And then it says have them at least 150 opinion. Okay. Portugal, for example, is at 75. So we can send our diplomat to Portugal to make them extra happy, to get them up a little bit more, right? Get them up a little bit more. Okay. So that's going to happen, right? And then that'll say acquire subjects. Okay, acquire subjects. Maybe we'll be able to vassalize some of these Irish nations. So it wants us to sort of do that in the future. And we could try to get some, in fact, these small little guys, if we click on these, kind of an interest, we're a very powerful big country. They might even want us to diplomatically vassalize them. offer vassalization. However, this requires an opinion of 190. 190, so it's going to take some work to do this. But we could actually try to diplomatically vassalize a few of these guys. That's kind of appealing, because that doesn't even require our troops. That doesn't even require war. So we could integrate land into our country peacefully, which is really cool. Usually this requires a disproportionality between power size, right? Like if we tried to do this to Brittany, they would say no. And it's because the economic base compared to Brittany is not nearly as severe as like with Leinster. Leinster is a tiny little poor Irish nation. Brittany is a pretty healthy 5-province sort of, a French culture group kind of nation. They're a pretty well-to-do nation down here, and they're much larger than Leinster. They're 5 times larger than Leinster. So they're not going to do vassalization, for example. So if we go back to our missions here, mission tab, have a high income. Okay, there's nothing we can really do about this. This is going to go up over time as we take more land, as we expand our empire, as we develop our land, as we strengthen our internal country, our income will go up, and then eventually we'll be able to get some things here. Nice. And it says the 100 Years' War. The 100 Years' War is at war with France. One of the following must be true. Is at war with France or return Maine to France in the surrender of Maine event. Okay. So there's going to be an event that happens between us and France, and we're going to decide whether to go to war with them at that point or not. However, when we go to war with France, we will get free claims on some of the French regions. So we'll get reasons to attack France. This actually sends us down on a path to ultimately subjugate France, which is kind of interesting. So we'll be able to potentially subjugate France. We also have some missions down here for colonizing the New World, discovering India and working on India, discovering the Americas, working on America, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of cool. So there's a mission. So for the most part, it's saying we need force limit and we need manpower. So force limit, we can see down here that we need to build up force limit, we could just spend these troops, we can spend these guys and just start doing this. Now here's the interesting thing. To train a regiment, it's going to cost us 1,000 manpower. We're trying to get up to 18,000 for the mission, which is going to give us a huge justification for war in the British Isles. That's a really good thing. So it's kind of a weird thing that we're going to have to actually lose 8,000 dudes to get up to 37,000. And then try to get back up to 18,000. This actually might be kind of a peaceful start. I think this is going to be an interesting go with England. I think it's going to be mostly peaceful until we get these missions done. And once we get those missions done, I think we're going to be unleashed. But I think we're really going to be strengthening our country and stuff. So maybe England actually ends up kind of being a good nation if we can handle these internal disasters. It's really going to be a very internal look. See, it does say down here in the decisions, we have a decision to form the British nation, form Great Britain. But it says that we need land over Scotland to do that. Actually, I have a question over here. Are these it does say permanent claims on all of these areas. That's really cool. So the decisions here, these are things that we could work toward long term, like forming different nations and other things. And some of these are really small and insignificant. They'll just pop up when we hit the requirements for these. It'll warn us about that. It'll tell us about that. But one of the things we're maybe looking to do is form Great Britain. So that's something that we'll maybe be able to do. We have that disaster happening. So let's look at our economy, because we got 73 ducats. We kind of need to think about how we're going to spend that and how we're going to do that and so on and so forth. So one of the things is, if we zoom in, we actually saw that in the production tab, just really quickly, we have 29,000 troops. What the heck? 29,000 troops? Here they are. 16,000 men sitting in London in the Royal Army, 11,000 infantry, 5,000 cavalry. Over here, we have the Army of Scotland, 10,000 infantry and 3,000 cavalry. So we have 8,000 cavalry. Those guys are kind of expensive. I'm almost kind of tempted to potentially remove some of those guys, except for it'd be a waste of manpower to just disband them. But those guys are very expensive. So we have these troops. That's all this is. When you look at the world and you see all these little banners and stuff, there's basically 2 to 3 things that we're seeing on the screen right now in terms of icons. We see regiments and armies, like armies that are composed of regiments. Like Leinster has 4,000 troops. Kildare has 5,000, 4,000. And these are just the ones we can see because of the fog of war. We can look up France's power. We can actually go into the ledger, a little bit of a detour here. Go here and we can go to armies, military, armies, rivals. We can filter for rivals and see France. 28,000 troops. That's a little bit less than us. However, remember, France has all of their subjects. That doesn't add up their subject nations. We can see some of their subjects have 3,000, 3,000. Orleans probably has like 6,000. So altogether, they actually have a larger army than us. France has a larger combined army than us when we add everything up. And we could do that. We could go to the ledger, we can add all this stuff up. So all the information is known. We just don't know where they're positioned exactly in sort of the space because of the fog of war. But we can always look up the specifics of their army, which is really, really useful when deciding to go to war with someone, right? Trying to assess the situation. So we're looking and we're seeing armies, right? We have our armies here, and we can grab these guys and we can see them, and then we can move them around and stuff. And there you go. That's kind of cool. And we also have, there's also ships. So we have a navy over here, which is composed of the Royal Navy. Okay, 6 heavy ships, 18 transports. Heavy ships are like really, really heavy duty. Heavy ships are heavy duty. They have a lot of guns. They have a lot of durability. These are the ones that win the naval battles. Decisively win the naval battles. England is incredibly powerful in the seas, and we have one of the most powerful navies in the world at the start of the game. We have 9 light ships, though. These light ships can actually go down here. We can select mission, have them protect trade. Okay? So we can protect trade, and we can actually decide where we might want to actually be protecting trade. And what we can do is we can actually protect trade in an area that we're collecting. So because London is our capital, London is in the English Channel. We collect part of the 51. In fact, we're collecting 51% of this money. This hasn't quite updated yet, but essentially what we can do is we can have these ships protecting trade in the English Channel. It says whether or not they'll pay for the themselves or not. This is not accurate. We're gonna have to let the game run a little bit to see how this goes. We could alternatively put them up in the North Sea, which that pulls down some into here. Oh, we could actually send them. Lubeck might actually be our best option. We'll have to play around with this when the game is unpaused. But Lubeck, we're trying to see, we have a merchant over here. So we haven't talked about our merchants. That's a good point. Let's hold off on this for a second. Sorry, the third thing that we can see is the forts, right? Little icons that show forts. So we have a fort here, we have a fort here, fort here, fort here, and actually there's a fort down here even still. Holy cow, lots of forts. And other countries have forts as well. And we can go to there's a fort map mode here. I have it. You could just, again, look it up, right click, and just find the fort map mode, or just set it somewhere on one of your bars. But I have the fort map mode down here now. So I can show you the fort map mode here. These are the forts that we have. And we're paying we're paying a significant amount of income to maintain these forts, which might be unnecessary. The French ones are kind of nice. However, the interesting thing about the French ones is this is a woods province, so that's a good defensive position. This is a grasslands province. Not exactly the best place to have a fort, to be honest. But there's really no good option for us down here, to be honest, either. So we might just keep that one. Oh, we have Calais as well. Holy cow. We have Calais as well. These are good sort of naval invasion points as well for us, so having these be forts is probably something we'll want to sort of maintain those. The forts on mainland Europe are going to be very good strategic bits. We're not going to talk too much about forts until we actually get into a war, but they are kind of what they seem like. They protect the area around them. Having this fort up here in Northumbria, fantastic. Having this one down here, probably unnecessary. We could actually delete this fort, because what we'll notice is these forts are actually costing us a significant... We're paying 6 ducats a month, 1 ducat per fort. And that's a huge amount of our expenses are going into fort maintenance. Now we can do one of two things. We can mothball the forts. We can click on a province with a fort, and we can go down here and we can mothball it, which means now we're only paying half its cost. It's red to remind us. And when we go to war, we can flip it back online. It'll take a little bit to warm up, but for the most part, I don't think Scotland's going to sneak attack us. If we go to war against Scotland, it'll probably be an aggressive war. It'll be an aggressive war. Over here, I'm thinking, though, to be honest, we'll mothball them. We'll mothball them. I think realistically, there's a really good case to destroy these 2 forts and save the money, because we have a good fort protecting the northern border, and for the most part, we control the oceans. No one's going to be able to land on us, but just in case, just because we're a little bit newer to the game and our economy is pretty strong, let's just actually mothball the forts there. We'll keep these forts. We'll mothball this one. It's a little bit more sort of buffered back from France. We'll keep this one mothballed. These two will keep online. We'll keep these ones online, but that should save us a couple more ducats a month, which is great. In fact, we could probably, well, I like Calais as a landing point for us, so that's going to be fine. So that's basically what we could see on the screen, right? So it looks, anytime it looks confusing, it's just troops moving around, it's ships moving around, and the ships moving around aren't necessarily at war with you. The troops moving around aren't necessarily at war, and France can just be repositioning its troops all the time. There could be a war breaking out between Burgundy and France troops could be moving all over the place and stuff like that. It doesn't mean, and a lot of the ships will be protecting trade and just patrolling and so on and so forth. So it's not that we're, like, moving units is not something to be scared of. It's just something that happens. And like when we sort of protect trade with these light ships, which we were talking about, like let's protect trade in Lubeck. We talked about, let's just do it. Set a mission, protect trade. That's what light ships are really good for. They can fight in the naval engagements as well. They're not helpless in battle, but primarily they're really cool because they can pay for what we call pay for themselves, basically. We pay a maintenance on them, right? But if they're out protecting trade and helping our economy directly, they can actually cover their own costs doing that, which is really, really nice. The interesting thing is, if we're going back to our economy here, since we talked about our missions, we talked about how we look at the map, we talked about our units, and we know we need to get 8,000 more units, and we could just build those 8,000 more units right now, although we have that manpower issue. A couple of things that we would need to look at now. Let's look at the economy. And really, for the most part, you can't really boost your taxation, your production, your trade. That's not something that you can really feasibly do in the short term. This is by we take more land, we have more land that we can tax. If we take more land, we have more places that we expand our trade influence. If we have more land, we have more places that are producing goods, right? It just makes sense. Like as we take land, as we develop our provinces, because one thing you can do is you can actually strengthen your actual owned provinces as well. But you can change this number, you can increase this number in a certain way. So you can actually develop from within. And as you do that, or as you take more land, because of course if we steal this, or not steal this, but if we conquer this from Scotland, that's 8 development, that's some base tax, that's some base production, that's some manpower, that's going to be incorporated, and that's going to expand our reach, our trade power reach as well. So these numbers, what I'm saying is basically these numbers, you don't really change these. Like I don't just wish for my taxation to go higher. There's something that goes up over time. The expenses are where we manage the economy. The expenses are where we can reduce the fort maintenance like we did by mothballing some of our forts. Actually, I am going to get rid of the London fort. We're going to get rid of it because the London is a capital. Capitals already have a free fort. It's called a capital city. It's a level 1 fort level. It is true that the castle gives it a big boost. It adds +2. It makes it a level 3 fort. That is true. That is really cool. However, it's going to be very unlikely that someone can actually get to London in the first place. So, and if they do, the fort there will be enough until reinforcements arrive, basically. So we'll be okay with that. I'm going to destroy the fort in London. That's going to save us another half ducat a month. So now we're paying about half as much as we were before for our forts. And we could probably be more aggressive on this if we wanted to. That money's going to be really good because we can invest this money in our country. We can build larger armies, which make us more intimidating to be attacked in the first place. So a good sort of a good military might is like a good defense. And also it's going to allow us to build buildings and to develop our land, because just like we built a fort, and just like there was a fort here, there's other buildings that can be built here. All kinds of different buildings that we can build here to better strengthen the provinces. Now, right now, we don't have these unlocked. We have to get new technologies to be able to unlock these different kinds of buildings. Okay. But it's something that we're going to want to save our money for, because those buildings can be very expensive, anywhere from 100 gold to 500 gold to like 1,000 gold. So for different kinds of buildings and stuff. So it is something that we're going to need a lot of money for. So this is our monthly balance, monthly, not yearly, but monthly balance. And the thing we can actually, what we can do is, if we're not planning to go to war anytime soon, we can actually lower our army maintenance. Nothing wrong with this at all. And then as soon as we're at war, we can bring it back up. And it's true, these guys won't be quite ready to fight. But army maintenance essentially just make sure that the morale of the troops are at full. While we're at peace, and while we're feeling rather safe and confident on our English Isle here, and we have good allies like Austria and Castile and Portugal, no one's going to be attacking us. Ireland's not going to sneak attack us or anything like that. We're going to lower our army maintenance. It's going to save us a huge amount of money. So Because really what we're waiting for is we're waiting for this manpower to come back. We're also trying to make more money so we can build a larger army as well. And we don't need to pay for that army while we're just kind of sitting around. So there we go. That's how we can kind of manage the economy. We could do this with naval maintenance, but because we have some of these ships that are out, navies are quite a bit cheaper to maintain than armies. And this navy is just going to sort of go off and do its thing. And we want to make sure that it's feeling good for while it's protecting trade. So we don't really want to reduce the naval maintenance because our navy is actually working for us right now, slightly. It is true that these heavy ships are pretty expensive, like the Royal Navy is pretty expensive, but we'll just kind of keep them around. We're going to want them ready to go anyways if something does happen. Because they can kind of protect the mainland while the army gets situated and all that anyways, if something did happen. The Navy really is kind of England's first line of defense, to be honest, and it's our crowning achievement, really. So for the most part, we've looked at kind of everything here. We've looked at most everything, except for now, let's spend our money. So there's a couple things, and if we look here, it says we have free advisor slots. We know we need to get 8,000 more troops to get up to our maximum force limit. Okay, we know that. Also, we need to get advisors potentially because it says we have free advisor slots. So if we go to our court and we actually look, we have no advisor here, no advisor here, no advisor here. Well, these advisors, they give us little powers. Like Philip Drake here gives us missionary strength, plus 2%. Missionary strength. In fact, wait a second. We saw something over here where it said same religion. Same religion. Wait a second. Religion? We haven't even talked about religion. Let's go to the map mode. Religion. Everybody in our immediate sphere is Catholic for now, right? We're about 50 years away from the Reformation and all the Reformation wars and the 30 Years of War and the Protestants versus the Catholics and the Reformed and the Anglicans and all this stuff, right? And England historically goes Anglican. And there's some really cool stuff with that. And we might actually end up, we could go Reformed or we can go Protestant or we can do these different things, which is really, really cool. So if we look at Europe right now, though, and we could see that it's mostly Catholic, and that's why it's a big giant kumbaya right now of Catholic countries. If we look down here, we can see that there's some Sunnis in North Africa, Sunnis in sort of Asia, Orthodox here. There's a little bit of a sort of religious turmoil in this region as we're sort of literally blending Catholic and Orthodox and Sunni, and all these things are sort of blending together through this sort of like strip right here. And that creates a lot of turmoil for these countries over here, and it becomes more of an issue. But for now, we're feeling pretty unified over here, right? We all agree in the same sort of religious structure. And that means that if we go to our religious tab, we have no provinces. All of your provinces are already the same religions. Provinces that no longer have the state religion will be displayed here. So if we get any provinces that are not Catholic, which won't happen for a while because there won't be really reformations until 60 years from now, we're not going to need any religious conversions, right? Or we have a missionary here that's just sitting here, basically, just chilling, just sitting here. This also means, actually, the fact is we're Catholic, right? That means the Pope. So the papal state, we're very in tune with what's going on in Rome. And there's a whole thing going on with the papacy. In fact, we have 2 cardinals right now. England has 2 active cardinals. That's good. We could try to butter up the Pope, get them nice and happy, because they already like us. We're a good Catholic nation. And we could butter up the Pope, maybe even ally the Pope, and that can help us get more papal influence, and we can leverage that for more benefits. The Pope gives you a bunch of special abilities and stuff if you can sort of do some things there. It just depends on whether or not we want to spend those relationship slots in that way or not. So basically, what I'm trying to say is we saw Philip Drake here. He helps us with missionary strength. We don't have anyone to convert. We don't need missionary strength. Instead, we can go with this person gives a stability cost modifier. Well, we did say we wanted a stability, so to make it a little bit cheaper could be kind of cool. This guy's really good. National tax modifier, 10%. Hey, there you go. Problem is, it's not a big problem. He's a level 2 advisor, so his monthly cost, his monthly salary is 4 ducats a month. It's pretty expensive. Pretty expensive. This guy's only 1 ducat a month. He's only 1 ducat a month. 16 ducats to hire as a signing bonus, and then 1 ducat a month. 30 years old. So he should live for a while. He gives us 1 administrative skill. So if we look at our leader here, King Henry VI. Yikes. 0, 0, 0. He's infertile. He's an embezzler. This guy is a scumbag, basically. And he's a terrible leader. He's a 000. If we look at France and we go to their diplomacy tab, it shows the Charles VII is a 424, significantly more skilled in administrative aspects and diplomatic aspects and military aspects. Our guy is just a Dumbo, basically. He's got no skill in any of these things. Now we have a base skill of 3, and then it looks like we're actually using our national focus on Diplo. I don't think we want to do that. I think we want to move our national focus potentially over to admin or to military, or just to deselect it altogether and just keep sort of an even value here. I think we're going to go no focus. I think we need all of these things equally. You could make a case to go military. So what these do is, we haven't talked about these, but this skill, these income, administrative power income, based on your skill of your leader in the base, and then also the advisors that you get, this essentially is the main technology power in the game. This is how we buy technologies. We build administrative power, we build diplomatic power, we build military power, and then we spend that to get these different technologies. So in this case, we have none. We're not getting boosted from our leader at all. We need a new heir. We need to get this guy off the throne. This guy's just like, this is doomsday over here. One thing we can do is we can actually put this guy on the battlefield. Let's roll this guy as a general. Let's get him on the battlefield, and hopefully maybe he dies in a siege or in a battle or something like that. So let's get him on the battlefield. That'll be good. If you make him into a general, he's a little bit more likely to die. I don't know if we're actually going to be going to war soon, but let's just get him prepared to die if we can. That would be great. We have no legal heir. We need to get an heir. We have a good queen, though, unfortunately. And if King Henry died, the queen would take over. The queen would take over. And this would be totally great because she's fantastic. She is fantastic. But she would act as a regency until the heir took over. Okay, so she would be a temporary ruler until the heir took over. And this is because we have Rights of Man. Rights of Man adds this sort of queen regency system. So we want advisors to be able to increase our skill, basically to compensate for a lousy leader. But even if we had a good leader, more points is good. More income over here is good. So we want to get this guy, because he's actually going to make it so we get more administrative power. We can get these technologies faster. There's other things that we need to use our administrative power for. We could see that one of the things we wanted to do was get our stability higher. It says that we need a stability, our stability is less than 1, so we want a positive stability. We don't know much about stability, but it makes sense if our country has a looming disaster. If we can increase something called stability, it makes sense that would be good. So we can boost stability here, and it will cost 90, but we only have 28 administrative power. So it's going to take a while to earn those points to boost up our stability, but that is something that we're probably going to want to do. So making it cheaper to do that, to boost up stability, could be nice. Over here, we have a diplomatic reputation guy that we can grab. Diplomatic reputation helps us more easily sort of get people to agree to royal marry with us or alliance with us, or it sort of allows us to have more sway over other nations when we're making diplomatic requests. And then we have a military person here. We might actually, you know what the heck? Maybe we pay for this discipline guy more military discipline. Our troops will have more discipline. This means they'll fight harder. They'll take less damage. They'll deal more damage. They're just more disciplined. They're ready to, this is just fantastic. Like, discipline is a really, really good military stat. So giving this to our troops is fantastic. Let's do that. And then over here, we actually cannot afford. We actually just can't even afford to get this guy. But we'll wait until we get a little bit. He's only about a ducat and a half. We'll get enough for this guy in a second. We gotta earn our monthly income here, and we'll be able to hire this dude on. And you can see our monthly income is going down because of our advisor costs. That's how it goes. That's how it goes. But for the most part, we've situated things. So we have one more advisor slot. And the truth is, if you're playing a weaker nation without such a strong economy, if you are paying for your troops, and in fact, paying for our troops, we're still making money, which is cool. But if you're paying for all your forts and all your troops and everything like that, we might have been losing money. So we had to manage our expenses in order to allow ourselves the wiggle room to actually hire a military advisor that it costs us 4 ducats a month. Wow, that is expensive. That is expensive, no joke. The last thing we have not taken a look at internally, okay, we have pretty much everything relatively well devised, is the estate system. And the estate system is a new system with, it's an old system that's been completely redone for 1.3. So again, this is a tutorial covering, the game in its current state in mid-2020, summer 2020, which has just gotten a big update, and a lot of things have changed. And the estates have been reworked here. And England's kind of nice if you have the parliament, because you don't have the nobility. You're not messing with the nobility. So we just have two different estates we're dealing with. The clergy, which sort of corresponds to administrative and church and religion and all these different things. And base tax and administrative, all kind of like lumps into there. And the burghers are the merchant guilds that factor into diplomacy and trade and navy. And it's sort of our outward-looking faction, right? Outward-looking faction, globalization faction. And then clergy is more about sort of like internal situation stability and keeping things like right at home and stuff like that. That's the way you can kind of look at these two different estates thematically. But essentially what we could do, and you know what, one thing we might want to do is just seize some land from them. And the reason for that is some of these we can click on these to give them privileges, and some of these privileges require that we give them land. Right now we have 33% of our land is controlled by us. However, if we go below 30% here, we get some penalties. So we want to stay above 30% what's called crown land, 30% crown land. Some of these actually give away. We lose crown land when we give out these policies. Some of these are really powerful though. Like the religious state, that's super good, but it's 10% crown land. So if we give that away, we'll be at 23%, we'll be below 30, and then we'll get some penalties. So we want to seize some land. This does lower their loyalty by 20, but I'll tell you this much. They can go down to 30. As long as their loyalty is at least 30, they're happy. If it goes below 30, they're upset, just like with their crown land. If the loyalty goes below 30, they're upset. The influence is how powerful they are within our country. How powerful they are within our country. So we want them to have more influence, so they give us more benefits, and we want their loyalty to be in the positive so they're not upset with us. If they're upset, then their influence kicks in and turns negative, and then all their benefits become more harsh negatives against us. So we want them to be happy, and we want them to be relatively powerful. However, if this number ever gets to 100%, they rebel against us. They actually try to like take over the country. They're like, we have so much influence, we're just going to take over the whole country and the government and everything. So we don't want them to get too high influence. It's a balancing act. But if we can get these guys more influence by giving them privileges, we can make them more happy and give them more influence. We can actually potentially get this national tax modifier they're giving us, 10%, we can maybe potentially increase that. Over here, we're getting trade efficiency. We could maybe increase that from 15% to 20%, or from 10% tax modifier to maybe 15% or 20%. So if we go through here, we can see if there's anything good here that we want. Administrative cost advisor minus 25%. We have an administrative advisor. Making that person cheaper would be really good. However, it increases the cost of stability by 10%. We just said we might want to actually boost stability soon. So I don't know if we want to hit this quite yet, because stability, this is going to make it more expensive to grab stability. So we can maybe hold off on that one here. This one, I like this one here, the oversight by the clergy, because it just gives them 10 influence, 10 happiness and 10 influence. Doesn't give them any crown land. That's nice. We're not worried about the absolutism right now. This is way later in the game. Way later in the game. Totally not worried about it early in the game. Not even a mechanic that's in play right now. The merchant guilds here, and we can get up to 4 of these. We can get patronage of the arts. We can get some prestige. We haven't talked about what prestige, but this reduces our national tax modifier. I don't know if we need to hurt our economy just for a little bit of prestige, and then yearly prestige. We haven't even talked about what prestige does, but it makes sense that a more prestigious country sort of has ability to create better relationships and trade benefits and just a number of different things. Free enterprise is the same one that gives them 10 loyalty and 10 influence, but it doesn't have any modifiers. I like that one. Because again, we're trying to give them more influence so they can give us more benefit. More loyalty is just good for making them more happy. Again, the diplomatic advisor, cost reduction, we don't even have a diplomatic advisor right now. So for the most part, I think that's really all we want to do. We can take out a bunch of loans if we're ever in trouble at the cost of a little bit of trade efficiency. I kind of like this, indebted to the burghers, when you're in a pinch, but right now we don't need any loans. We can sort of appoint the burghers into the admiralty, and that will make it so that we get cheaper admirals that we can recruit, which is kind of neat. But we can't do that right now because we don't have the naval tradition to spend to do this. So it loses admiral tradition to sort of lower the standards of the admiralty. I think for the most part we've kind of hit everything we want, but I think we could swoop in and hit these buttons, but it is going to make, we don't need to do that one. Well, I think that's all we're really going to do for now, is just hit those 2 buttons, give them a little bit more influence, give them a little bit more loyalty. I will do for the, we will appoint Clerical Advisory Council. Okay. That's going to make it a little bit more expensive to get the stability. It's going to go back up to 100. 100 is normal cost. Minus 10% plus 10% balances out 100 cost. It's going to make this guy quite a bit cheaper, but it's also going to give them enough influence. I believe this will update. So that they'll get more influence and we'll be able to get more national tax modifier. So this will update when we unpause. I mean, disaster. And I think for the most part, guys, to be honest, we were talking about using our diplomat as a spy, but then we read the mission that says that it wants us to sort of build up our manpower, and we're going to get all these free claims. So we could spend we could use our diplomat to go here to Cork and create a claim, and it'll take a few years to do that. Or we can just work on levy the troops, and it'll give us a free claim on Cork. So I don't know if it really makes sense to actually be using our diplomat to inefficiently get claims on all this stuff, when we're going to get it all for free if we just kind of hang out. This is actually going to be a very casual, good beginner sort of entry into the game, I think, is in the next episode when we unpause. We're going to end up just sort of trying to get that mission done. That's going to be our number one objective. Get the mission done, deal with the internal unrest. That's going to be the two things that we're going to be frantically trying to do. Okay. But what we can do with our other diplomat is we can try to start vassalizing a few of these people. The other thing is the Pope. The Pope. We also want to make our allies happy. The Pope would be our fourth relationship. Vassals count as a relationship, right? If we vassalize Leinster, that's a relationship. That's a relationship. Let's try to potentially vassalize Leinster. Let's send them a royal marriage. That'll set up the alliance, right? So we send them a royal marriage, then we'll go in for the alliance on the next day. We'll get these diplomats back. I think we'll probably go a little over our diplomatic relations. I think that's going to be okay. That's just going to be the way of it. We're going to want to get a diplomatic advisor to help balance that out. We're making good money right now, but we're not paying the troops. We're not paying for the troops, and we're not paying for a lot of our forts either. So thanks, everybody. I think for the most part, we're ready to unpause. We have a mission in mind. We know France is going to be a thorn in our side. We've got some good alliances. We need to continue to work on our diplomatic game where we're building up our strength and our manpower back at home and building up our economy. We need more money to finish building up our army. And then we also need to just build manpower so we can actually get a reserve so that we're actually going to get that mission to, that free mission to be able to conquer Ireland, which will be great. Guys, this was a little bit of a longer episode, but I'll be honest, it wasn't as long as I thought it was going to be. Usually I've been spending about an hour and a half going through all of the sort of opening situations and describing the game to new players. There's so much we haven't talked about, guys. We've only talked about stuff that we needed to talk about in order to make decisions and make a plan of attack and to be able to understand how to play the game. Next episode, we're actually going to be unpausing the game and showing what the game actually feels like to actually physically play it, and sort of what you need to know and look out for as you're sort of moving and grooving and stuff like that. There's a couple other things that we'll start to introduce in the next bit. We've mentioned stability, this idea of stability. We haven't talked about what it actually does or means. We've mentioned prestige. We've mentioned corruption. There's a lot of these currencies up here we haven't actually discussed or talked about in any way. So if you guys are feeling lost, that's okay. We're going to keep talking about it in the next episode. Thanks, everybody. We could talk more about trade as well because we didn't really talk too much about that. Thanks, everybody, for watching this longer episode. Again, the idea with this series is I think it's going to be a shorter series, but the episodes are going to be longer. So if you guys have questions, please ask down below. There is going to be a playlist for this series as well, so that'll be a way to sort of keep up with the episodes. Playlist link down below. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Of course, we have other tutorials that are completely finished at this point, like the Muscovy one and the Portugal one. Those are with no DLC. The Castile one and the Ottomans one are with all DLC. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. I will see you guys in the next one.